The CRF150F and the CRF150R are both 4-stroke 150cc 4-strokes from Honda, but they're very different bikes. So you don't want to buy the wrong one and end up disappointed or crash and get hurt because it's too hard to control. So the main difference is the CRF150F is the trail bike. It's a air-cooled 4-stroke trail bike, while the CRF150R is a 150cc liquid-cooled motocross race bike. Those are the two basic categories of these bikes, but now I want to go into a little bit more depth of each part of the bike and why you may or may not want it. For example, the CRF150R, the engine, it is a high-performance engine that is made for racing. This means that it doesn't have a lot of low-end or mid-range torque. Pretty much all the power is shifted towards the higher RPM. So it has a lot more horsepower than the 150F, probably about 3 times as much. And while that's really cool and fun to ride on the track, if you're an experienced rider or if you're just riding up and down on a straight path that's smooth, that snappy power is really cool and the bike is really loud. But if you're a beginner, just starting out, or a casual rider, this 150R engine makes it really hard to learn how to ride because the lack of torque right off of idle makes it really easy to stall the bike. So you got to have a lot more precise clutch and throttle control, otherwise you're going to be constantly stalling it. Not to mention having to kickstart it because it's kickstart only, and this bike is not the easiest 4-stroke to kickstart. So if you stall it and you don't have a good leg for kicking it, this can be extremely frustrating if all you want to do is learn how to ride a dirt bike or just have a nice relaxing trail ride. Whereas the 150F engine, it is low performance, and this is actually a good thing, which I'll talk about maintenance and reliability in just a minute, but it has very smooth, good torque right off idle. The power is very smooth, which means that when you're just trying to get going in first gear, it doesn't take much throttle and it doesn't take as precise of clutch control to get going without stalling. So you can start going at a lower speed. The bike is a lot easier to handle and manage at lower speeds because it's not jerky. It has very smooth throttle control, partly because of the character it has and the heavier flywheel weight. And the flywheel weight on the 150F is extra heavy, which makes the engine spin up a lot slower, which is good because this makes it smoother accelerating, and the rear wheel won't spin as quickly, which means you'll get better traction and your rear tire isn't going to slide around as much. And the heavier flywheel weight also helps prevent stalling because that extra mass, it's going to take longer to slow down and stall. Whereas the 150R race bike, it has very little flywheel weight, which is nice for racing. It revs up extremely quick, which has a lot of potential for acceleration if you get traction, but it also revs back down very quickly, making it very easy to stall. Then moving on to the suspension, the 150R motocross bike, it's set up for racing on tracks with jumps, which means it's very stiff, it's very harsh. If you're riding at low speeds, you're going to feel every little bump, and this is going to be exhausting and not very comfortable if you're a beginner. On the other hand, you got the 150F, which is very simple, pretty outdated suspension, but this is perfectly fine if you're just starting out because it's softer and it's simple. There's very little to go wrong. There's nothing really to adjust on it, and this soft plush suspension is going to absorb the bumps and rocks and impacts if you're going 5 to 10 miles an hour a lot better than the motocross bike version. And then as far as maintenance goes, you're going to have generally a lot less maintenance on the 150F, the trail bike, because it's lower maintenance, it has less power, and when you have less power, it's not going to require as frequent of oil changes, air filter changes. The airbox is more sealed up, so less dirt and dust and mud can get in there, so you don't have to clean the air filter as often. And when you have less power, stuff like the chain and the top end, the piston, all that stuff is going to wear out slower, so you can go longer between needing to maintain it or rebuild it or replace parts. Now, this doesn't mean that the CRF150R is unreliable, because you can get well over 100 hours on the engine before needing a rebuild. It's just in comparison to the 150F, it's a lot more maintenance and not quite as reliable in the long run. Now, a quick comparison for size. The CRF150R has the small wheel and the big wheel, which are about 1.5 inches to 2 inches difference in seat height. The 150R small wheel is better if you're 4'10" to like 5'1", but it depends on your inseam length. Then the 150R big wheel or expert model is better if you're 5 foot to 5'5" tall. And the CRF 150F, it has the same size wheels as the 150R big wheel, and it's good if you're 5 foot to 5'4" height range. So which is best for beginners? Well, if you haven't figured it out already, the CRF 150F is definitely the best choice if you care about your safety for starting out, for a number of reasons. It's cheaper, easier to ride, easier to maintain. It's just an overall better package for learning on, because it'll build your confidence a lot quicker. But what about trail riding? Is it still better for trail riding if you already have some experience? Well, I can tell you that after riding a 150R motocross bike in the woods, it's not for the faint of heart. It takes a very aggressive riding style to stay in control and have fun. So is it possible to ride trails on the 150R? Yes, it's just going to take a lot more effort, which is why I still recommend the 150F if you've already been riding for a year or two and are just looking to upgrade from a 110 or a 125 trail bike. And if you are just getting into dirt biking, or if you're still new and want to quickly build your confidence, I got a free guide that shows you how to prevent crashes and injuries if you're lacking confidence by using basic techniques. Check it out in the description below, or go to motocrosshideout.com/free lessons.